32 years ago, a high school girl vanished right after classes let out. In Austin, disappearing without a trace, leaving her family devastated and the community gripped by prolonged unease. Authorities once suspected a young man who appeared in the same hallway as her just before she vanished, but with no body, no clear physical evidence, and far too few leads to pursue, the investigation quickly stalled. Yet throughout all those years, that desperate father never gave up his fragile hope that his daughter was still out there somewhere and that the truth would one day come to light. Then one day, when the cold case team reviewed evidence that had been overlooked for more than 2 decades, they noticed a crucial detail that had been missed. A detail powerful enough to turn the entire case around and shock everyone involved in ways no one could have imagined. Before diving into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe. Austin, Texas, November 1994, stretched out under the crisp autumn sky and the distinctive rhythm of a city in transition, but still bearing the clear marks of the pre-digital era. This was a time when cell phones were still rare, the internet had not yet entered daily life, surveillance cameras appeared only sporadically at a few large commercial establishments, and every search for someone relied on landline phones or in-person visits. Against that backdrop, Eliza Hartley, 17 years old, a student at the Austin Beauty Institute in the South Lamar area, began November 14, 1994. Like any normal school day, Eliza was a first-year student in the hair design training program, with hands-on practice scheduled for the afternoon, and she usually left school earlier than the other students to catch her ride home. Around the early afternoon, Eliza participated in a hair-cutting practice session in class and was recorded as having completed her assignment ahead of schedule. At exactly 3 p.m., Eliza packed up her school supplies and left the classroom, according to accounts from her classmates and instructor. In the first-floor hallway of the Austin Beauty Institute, a VHS security camera, the low-quality tape recording type commonly found at vocational training facilities at the time, captured footage of Eliza appearing in frame at 3:04 p.m. The recording showed her moving with steady steps, carrying her school bag, heading toward the rear exit of the building. After leaving the camera's field of view, Eliza was believed to have continued down the hallway, leading to the back door and a small, secluded parking lot where students often parked in the afternoon. This was an area without surveillance cameras, with little foot traffic at dismissal time, and often obscured by a row of trees and an adjacent building. From 3:04 p.m. onward, no one saw Eliza again. No witness reported seeing her leave the parking lot. No one saw her return to the building, and there was no call from Eliza to her family or friends throughout the afternoon. When Eliza did not return home at her usual time, her family began actively contacting people who knew her, calling the school, calling her classmates, and even stopping by some places Eliza frequented, but nowhere was there any trace of her after dismissal. Repeated calls from 6 p.m. to past 8 p.m. went unanswered, with no new leads emerging. At 9:10 p.m., after nearly 6 hours of being unable to reach her and receiving no information about where Eliza might have gone, the family decided to officially report her missing to the Travis County Sheriff's Office. The Hartley family's call was transferred to the Travis County Sheriff's Office dispatch at 9:10 p.m., and within minutes, the night shift dispatcher had recorded all the initial details of Eliza's missing person case. The intake process in 1994 followed manual procedures. The dispatcher filled out a report form, entered the information into the still simple internal system, and then forwarded the file to the nearest patrol unit. At 9:32 p.m., 2 officers were dispatched to the Hartley home to verify whether the case might be a misunderstanding, as many initial missing person reports in that era were misclassified as temporary runaways. At the scene, the officers confirmed that Eliza was indeed not at home. The landline showed no incoming calls, and her everyday personal belongings were still in place. After verification, the case was officially upgraded to missing juvenile in accordance with Texas state regulations at the time. That very night, the case file was opened with its own case number and classified as missing person juvenile, a category that allowed for faster response measures compared to adult missing persons. The shift supervisor then assigned the lead investigator, Detective Mark Holden, who had experience with missing persons cases involving teenagers and had handled numerous cases in the South Lamar, Barton Hills area. Upon receiving the file, Holden began by gathering all basic information about Eliza to build an initial identification profile, physical description, clothing worn that day, travel habits, transportation used, close relationships, and her schedule for November 14th. Based on accounts from the family, the school, and the 3:04 p.m. camera sighting, Holden established a preliminary time window of disappearance from 3:04 p.m. The last time she was recorded leaving the school hallway until around 7:30 p.m., the time the family began to feel something was wrong and started calling her repeatedly. With no calls, transactions, or signs of contact during this period, Holden marked it as the critical time frame requiring data and witness collection the following day. Two key locations were immediately prioritized: the Austin Beauty Institute, where the victim was last seen, and Eliza's home, where she was expected to arrive before 6 p.m. These were the two pivotal points ensuring the investigation could begin, with on-site checks, camera reviews, and witness statements collected in chronological order. With no GPS technology, no cell phone data, or public cameras for real-time checks, Holden had to plan a traditional on-scene approach, return to the school the next morning with full personnel, inspect the parking lot and surrounding areas, collect statements from instructors and students present on the afternoon of November 14th, and reconstruct Eliza's movements in the minutes after leaving class. At the victim's home, Holden also planned to review belongings, check her bedroom to note anything missing, and establish the last time the family had contact with Eliza. The night of November 14th ended with the missing person file opened, basic information collected, and an on-site investigation plan prepared for implementation at first light the next day. On the morning of November 15, 1994, Detective Mark Holden arrived at the Austin Beauty Institute as soon as the campus opened, with the goal of collecting statements as early as possible to reconstruct the sequence of events before Eliza disappeared. The two-story building specializing in hair training operated on a fixed class schedule, so Holden began by meeting the instructor in charge of Eliza's afternoon practice class on November 14th. The instructor confirmed that Eliza had finished her assignment earlier than expected, packed up around 3 p.m., and asked to leave class before the official dismissal time. Holden recorded this detail as the first important time marker, consistent with the VHS camera data showing Eliza in the hallway at 3:04 p.m. Next, Holden spoke with the group of classmates from the same session, who were present from about 2:30 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. The classmates described Eliza leaving class with a normal demeanor, showing no signs of stress or hurry. However, when probing deeper into the exact timing, small discrepancies emerged in the statements. Some insisted Eliza left right after 3 p.m., others recalled around 3:02 or 3:03. While one student near the door said she saw Eliza stride out of class very quickly, prompting Holden to wonder if something had caused Eliza to want to leave early. Still, all statements agreed on one point: Eliza did not return to class after leaving. Holden reconstructed Eliza's path based on this information and interviewed the front desk staff member on afternoon duty, responsible for observing general school activities. The receptionist recalled seeing Eliza pass by the counter earlier, but did not see her return after 3 p.m. and had no record of her leaving through the front entrance. This aligned with the VHS video direction, showing Eliza heading toward the rear hallway. To strengthen the timeline, Holden asked two maintenance staff working in the supply room near the hallway area. One said he had seen the figure of a male student following Eliza by a few minutes, while the other was unsure of the timing, because he was focused on equipment. The detail about this male drew Holden's attention, and upon checking the student roster from the previous afternoon, the name Christopher Wade matched statements from two classmates who said they saw Wade heading toward the rear hallway between 3:05 3:06 p.m. This was a significant detail because it placed Wade and Eliza in the same area within a window of just tens of seconds. When compiling all the statements, Holden established a fairly clear initial timeline: 3 p.m. Eliza leaves class, 3:02. 3:03 p.m. Eliza walks down the hallway, 3:04 p.m. Eliza appears on camera in the first floor hallway, 3:05. 3:06 p.m. Christopher Wade is seen heading in the same direction, 3:07. 3:10 p.m. No further sightings of Eliza's movements after she leaves the frame. Although the timeline was relatively consistent, some minor inconsistencies remained, including the exact moment she stepped out of class and differing perceptions of her walking speed. These discrepancies were not large enough to alter the overall sequence, but clearly illustrated the characteristics of eyewitness accounts in brief, fast-moving events, especially without additional hallway surveillance cameras. By late morning, Holden finalized the list of the last people to see Eliza: the practice class instructor, 4 classmates seated near her table, the receptionist, and 2 maintenance staff in the rear hallway area. All of them, directly or indirectly, provided data to reconstruct the critical 10-minute window between 3 o'clock and 3:10 p.m. In that list, Christopher Wade stood out most prominently because his appearance coincided with Eliza's route and placed him in the same area in the brief moments before she vanished. When leaving the school at midday on November 15th, Holden had in hand a basic timeline, a list of key witnesses, the time Eliza left class, and especially the coincidence of Wade's presence, all forming the necessary foundation to move on to the next on-site verification steps. Right after completing the witness list and preliminary timeline at the school, Detective Mark Holden shifted focus to verifying the time points with objective evidence, starting with the Austin Beauty Institute's sole VHS camera system. The school had only one camera positioned in the first floor hallway, right near the path to the rear exit, and it was a low-quality tape recording device with limited frame coverage, typically capturing only basic movements and outlines of people passing by. Holden requested the school's technical department to provide the full footage from 2:50 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. on November 14th for detailed review. When replaying the tape on the school's VHS player, Holden noted the first matching data point with witness statements at 3:04 p.m. Eliza appeared in frame. In the footage, she stepped from the left corner of the hallway, carrying her school bag, walking normally with no obvious signs of distress. The moment she disappeared from the right edge of the frame was determined to be 3 hours 4 minutes and 18 seconds p.m. This was the last timestamp the camera provided of her. Holden continued reviewing the subsequent footage and detected another movement appearing at 3 hours 5 minutes and 30 seconds p.m. 72 seconds after Eliza left the frame. Though the image was blurry and noisy, the tall build, short hair, and dark-colored shirt matched the description of Christopher Wade from witness statements. When pausing at this point, Holden confirmed Wade appeared exactly on the hallway path Eliza had just taken. This 72-second time gap became a key factor, reinforcing the timeline Holden had built from witness interviews. After extracting the precise timestamps from the video, Holden began mapping Eliza's movement from the hallway to the rear parking lot. The first step was marking the camera position on the school's floor plan. A camera located at the intersection of the main hallway and the side hallway leading to the back door. From there, Holden determined Eliza's most logical path, leaving the main hallway, turning right through a roughly 10-meter side hallway, passing the school's supply storage, and heading straight to the back door, leading to the small parking lot, hidden from the main road. To ensure accuracy, Holden used the floor plan from the school's administrative office, combined with direct observation, to determine the time needed for a pedestrian to walk from the camera position to the back door. After 3 checks, the average estimated time was 14 to 18 seconds, depending on walking speed. With this data, Eliza disappearing from the frame at 3 hours 4 minutes and 18 seconds p.m. aligned with her likely reaching the back door around 3 hours 4 minutes and 30 seconds, 3 hours 4 minutes and 36 seconds p.m. However, the issue was that the camera only covered the main hallway and had no coverage at the final exit path or parking lot. When surveying the exterior area, Holden determined the rear parking lot lay entirely outside the view of any recording device. The lot was surrounded by dense trees and an adjacent commercial building, making it a complete blind spot by 1994 security standards. Additionally, the school floor plan showed two other blind spots the camera could not capture: the turn after the rear exit door and the canopy area near the parking lot. Holden clearly marked these three blind spots on the diagram for deeper survey areas. When combining Eliza's and Wade's appearances on tape with the hallway and parking lot layout, Holden completed a three-step movement diagram. Eliza left class at 3 p.m., appeared in the hallway at 3:04 p.m., then moved out of camera view toward the parking lot with no further camera tracking. Wade appeared 72 seconds later, following the same route but captured later. This diagram served as the foundation for identifying the plausible direction of both individuals during the critical time window, as well as highlighting the unmonitored space where any significant event could have occurred. Right after completing the movement diagram and identifying the blind spot locations around the hallway and parking lot, Detective Mark Holden proceeded to the next step in the missing person investigation protocol, organizing an on-site physical search of the entire Austin Beauty Institute campus to verify whether any physical traces supported the established timeline or opened new leads. On the morning of November 15, 1994, immediately after finishing the initial school session, Holden coordinated with local patrol units to deploy a small search team consisting of 4 officers, 2 civilian support personnel, and a K-9 unit trained in human scent detection. The starting point was the hallway captured on the VHS tape, the site of Eliza's last recorded image. There, Holden requested a thorough check of the floor, walls, handrails, and adjacent areas to identify any items, drops, or skid marks that might indicate Eliza dropped something or had a collision before leaving camera view. However, the hallway floor was completely clean, with only shoe marks mixed with the hair product dust typical in beauty training facilities, rendering visual tracking ineffective. Next, the team brought in the K-9 unit. The dog was given a scent sample from Eliza's jacket to follow her path. The dog immediately reacted at the end of the hallway, exactly where Eliza last appeared on video, then pulled toward the side hallway, leading to the back door. This reaction matched the movement diagram Holden had constructed, confirming the route from the main hallway to the back door was accurate. Upon leaving the interior area, the search team moved to the rear stairwell, one of the blind spots Holden had marked. The stairwell was narrow, rarely used with rough walls, dim lighting, and often used for transporting equipment or supplies. There, the team checked each step, hidden corners behind railings, and baseboards, but found no skid marks, dropped items, or signs of struggle. Neither the railing surfaces nor the steps showed unusual disturbance. This indicated that if Eliza had passed through the rear stairwell, she had not stopped or encountered trouble there. After ruling out the stairwell, the team expanded the search to the back door, where no recording device captured anything. The school's rear door opened onto a small concrete courtyard, leading directly to the uncovered parking lot. During the courtyard survey, the team paid attention to areas that might retain traces, such as wall edges, near trash bins, or 2 wall-mounted planter boxes. Still, no distinctive footprints, skid marks, drag marks, or surface alterations were found. There were also no blood stains, fabric traces, or unusual fingerprints on the door handle. The K-9, when led through the courtyard, continued a mild reaction toward the parking lot direction, but could not pinpoint an exact spot due to the many mixed outdoor odors. The most critical phase occurred at the rear parking lot, the presumed final point Eliza could have reached after leaving camera view. The lot had about 8 parking spaces, separated from the main road by dense trees. This was the location Holden hoped might yield evidence, as it was the endpoint in the movement diagram and the most likely site for an unusual event. The search team divided into 3 small groups to check every square meter, inspecting the concrete surface, areas next to the tree line, spots behind vehicles parked that day, and the dirt strip along the adjacent building wall. Members used probing rods, flashlights, and evidence bags to collect anything suspicious, from scraps of paper and hair to fabric pieces or anomalous tire marks. However, the parking lot contained only ordinary traces, old dry tire tracks, a few dried leaves, bits of soil dust, and mixed footprints from multiple people passing through. No item was identified as belonging to Eliza, no dropped belongings, no signs of struggle, and no legally valuable evidence. Everything reflected an overly clean scene. Either nothing happened there, or any action that did occur left no traces detectable by eye or 1994 forensic methods. Holden noted the data-poor nature of the parking lot area, viewing it as a characteristic of a potentially significant scene. Many blind spots, no cameras, and no direct witnesses. After 3 continuous hours of searching, the team covered the entire school perimeter, hallway, rear stairwell, back door, rear courtyard, parking lot, and adjacent building edge. The overall conclusion, Holden entered in the report. No new evidence emerged, no signs of struggle, or any physical indicators suggesting alternative investigative directions. Although the movement diagram was relatively confirmed as accurate, the school grounds provided no additional information to clarify Eliza's disappearance after 3:04 p.m., forcing Holden to expand the investigation beyond the campus. The failure to find any trace or evidence within the premises of Austin Beauty Institute forced Detective Mark Holden to expand the search area beyond the school grounds on the very day of November 15, 1994. Based on Eliza's movement diagram and the familiar routes typically used by students to leave the school, Holden identified 3 plausible routes, the first leading from the rear parking lot out to South Lamar Boulevard and toward the residential area where Eliza lived. The second branching onto Barton Springs Road, which had many small alleys and public parking lots, the third extending westward, descending toward the Lake Austin shoreline area, a spot students often visited after class. To avoid wasting time, Holden split the search teams into 3 directions, with each group responsible for sweeping rest stops, parking lots, parks, and small residential clusters along their assigned route. The expanded search was supported by a group of local volunteers familiar with the surrounding areas. Around early afternoon, while Holden's team was still checking commercial areas near South Lamar, a volunteer reported finding a red Honda Civic parked unusually at a parking lot along Lake Austin near the Pennybacker Bridge. Since Eliza owned a red Civic and the location fell within the third route Holden had prioritized, the information was immediately flagged for verification. Holden and 2 officers quickly drove to the lakeside lot, about a 10-minute drive from the school. Upon arrival, the red car stood out noticeably, parked slightly crooked relative to the lines, front facing the lake, and appearing to have been there since the previous night, as a thin layer of dew still clung to the windows. Before approaching the vehicle, Holden instructed an officer to check the license plate to avoid disturbing the scene unnecessarily. The plate was cross-checked on site with the Sheriff County Registration Database. The result confirmed it was Eliza Hartley's Honda Civic. Immediately, Holden ordered the area around the car cordoned off, designated the parking spot as a secondary crime scene, and directed all volunteers to step back to prevent disturbance of any potential remaining evidence. No other vehicles were parked close to Eliza's, making scene documentation easier. Holden began with an overall observation, the parking position, alignment, distance from the roadway edge, and the direction the car was facing. These details often help determine whether the driver stopped voluntarily or under duress. In Eliza's case, the car was parked relatively neatly, not touching other vehicles, not scraping the curb, and showing no signs of sudden braking. This led Holden to note that the parking may have occurred under normal conditions. External inspection showed the car had no scratches, no damage to the door locks, and no signs of forced entry. All windows were fully closed, the windshield clean except for natural dew. On the ground around the car, several shoe prints mingled with those of regular visitors to the lot, making it impossible for Holden to visually distinguish which might belong to Eliza or the driver before discovery. Notably, the Lake Austin shoreline parking lot was quite empty on weekdays, especially in the latter half of November. This was a low-traffic area outside tourist season, so a vehicle left overnight readily drew local attention. Holden recorded that the car was parked about 40 meters from the water's edge, far enough to avoid water influence and close enough to remain visible. This distance struck him as unusual, as other vehicles typically parked nearer the lot entrance for convenience. Continuing the survey, Holden stepped back to assess the surroundings. In front of the car lay open ground, leading to the lakeshore. Behind it, the lot entrance framed by trees. There were no security cameras. The light poles operated on an automatic schedule until 10 p.m., and no witnesses had been documented in the area during the evening hours of November 14th. Per park management data obtained via radio from Holden. After completing the vehicle's position documentation, Holden directed officers to set up temporary barriers to protect the area from passers-by and reported to the technical unit to prepare for a detailed vehicle examination plan. At this point, although the interior had not yet been accessed and no physical evidence collected, locating Eliza's red Honda Civic at the lakeside lot represented the most significant breakthrough since her disappearance. The parking position, the absence of the victim, and the characteristics of the lot became foundational elements for Holden to further expand the investigation into when and under what circumstances the car had been driven there. Immediately after designating the Lake Austin shoreline parking lot as a secondary crime scene and documenting the position of Eliza's red Honda Civic, Detective Mark Holden proceeded to the next step in the 1994 investigation protocol, examining the vehicle according to standard procedures to collect all possible trace evidence inside and around it. Examination began with exterior observation before any door was opened to avoid disturbing evidence. Holden, along with a crime scene technician, conducted a thorough sweep of the vehicle's outer surfaces, focusing on high-contact areas such as door handles, window edges, hood, windshield, and trunk. Visual inspection revealed no signs of prying or external force. Door seams were undeformed and glass uncracked. Using fingerprint powder, the technician noted several unfamiliar latent prints on the driver's door handle and the front right door edge. These prints were deemed clear enough for collection, lifted with specialized tape, and placed in sealed evidence bags. Next, Holden requested examination of the ground near the tires, but shoe prints and tire marks were mixed with older traces on the concrete, making identification of any specific marks unfeasible by 1994 standards. Upon completing the exterior, Holden authorized opening the doors and proceeding to interior examination. Doors were opened using gloves to avoid introducing new prints. As soon as the driver's door was pulled open, the team checked the lock status. The door was unlocked, with no signs of abnormal mechanical tampering. Inside, the driver's seat was adjusted quite far back, consistent with someone around 1.75 m or taller, an observation Holden noted because Eliza was shorter than that. The passenger seat was in a normal position, with no noteworthy personal items on the surface. The dashboard showed no signs of disassembly. The keys were not left in the ignition, and no papers or documents were on the dash. In the floor areas and rear seats, the technician discovered several items for collection. First, a small red fabric fiber adhered to the rear seat. The color and material could not be identified visually, so it was collected, sealed, and assigned an evidence number. Near the rear floor area, Holden noticed a patch of dried mud inconsistent with the usual urban dust in the car. This mud was scraped into a soil sample container and sealed separately for potential comparison with samples from other locations. Besides the fiber and mud, the most significant interior evidence was a 4 centimeters piece of industrial-grade duct tape stuck under the passenger seat. This tape differed from common household varieties, featuring reinforced fibers and specialized adhesive typically used in warehouses or repair shops. Holden instructed careful collection to avoid tearing or introducing new fibers. The tape piece was rolled onto specialized plastic backing and placed in an evidence bag with its own code. Checks of the glove compartment, cup holders, and door pockets yielded no wallet, student ID, spare keys, or characteristic personal items of Eliza's. The trunk was also inspected. No suitcase, no bags, no unusual objects, only dust particles and irrelevant paper scraps. This led Holden to note in the report that the vehicle lacked items a student would typically carry, though without clear knowledge of what Eliza had on November 14th. This observation was marked provisional. At the end of the examination, all doors were scanned with an alternate light source, blue light, for additional fingerprints, but nothing further noteworthy was found. The technician finalized the evidence list: unfamiliar fingerprints on door handles, red fabric fiber, gray duct tape piece, and dried mud sample. All were sealed, per protocol, labeled with evidence codes, collection time, precise location, and countersigned by 2 scene team members. The vehicle was then fully sealed with red evidence tape and towed to the sheriff's office evidence storage for further detailed forensic analysis. By late afternoon, Holden completed all procedures, documented the scene, and prepared the vehicle examination report, regarding this as the first major advance in understanding the circumstances surrounding Eliza's disappearance. Immediately after Eliza's vehicle was towed to evidence storage, and all trace evidence collected during the scene examination was sealed per protocol, the next step in the investigation was to transfer these items to the Travis County Sheriff's Crime Lab for analysis using 1994 technological capabilities. The lab received a list of 4 main evidence items: unfamiliar fingerprints lifted from door handles, red fabric fiber from the rear seat, industrial gray duct tape piece from under the passenger seat, and dried mud sample from the floor. First, the fingerprint specialist classified the lifted latents and selected the clearest for comparison through Texas AFIS. However, the 1994 AFIS database was limited, containing only prints from individuals with prior arrests or prosecutions. After 2 comparison runs, no matches were returned from existing records. This was not surprising to Holden, given the low hit rate of AFIS at the time and the fact that many individuals with minor offenses were not in the system. Still, the lack of matches meant fingerprints could not identify a suspect at this stage. Next, the red fiber sample went to the trace evidence unit. The technician examined it under optical microscopy and conducted a burn test on a tiny portion to observe odor and ash residue per 1990s textile analysis standards. Preliminary results indicated a polyester-nylon blend, a synthetic fiber common in everyday clothing, especially cold-weather jackets or scarves. The fiber's size and structure did not allow identification of a specific garment type. Moreover, since no comparison samples from Eliza had been submitted at that point, the technician could not determine whether the fiber was directly linked to the victim or someone else who had been in the vehicle. Following the fiber, the most scrutinized item was the industrial gray duct tape piece from under the passenger seat. The technician analyzed its structure by examining the reinforced backing and adhesive layer. Results confirmed it was not standard household duct tape, but an industrial grade with fiberglass or nylon reinforcement, commonly used in warehouses, construction, or mechanical shops. However, this type was produced by numerous suppliers, making specific sourcing or point-of-sale tracing impossible. Nothing about the tape fragment narrowed down potential users, given its wide range of applications. Regarding the dried mud sample from the vehicle floor, the forensic geologist compared its mineral composition and color to standard soil samples around Lake Austin. Analysis showed quartz, sand, and clay content similar to lakeside soil, though the Lake Austin area spans zones with nearly identical soil characteristics. Thus, the mud only confirmed the vehicle had likely been driven or parked near the lakeside area, already consistent with its discovery location, but did not pinpoint a precise spot or time of Eliza's presence there. After completing each analysis, the lab compiled results and forwarded the report to Holden. The report stated clearly, no fingerprint matches in the database, the red fiber lacked identifying value, the gray duct tape was not distinctive enough for sourcing, and the mud sample only corroborated general geographic conditions around the discovery site. In other words, the first round of trace evidence analysis yielded no leads to narrow suspects or clarify why Eliza's car appeared at the Lake Austin lot. Although the presence of these items suggested the vehicle may have been used or placed in an industrial environment or near the lakeshore prior to discovery, they were insufficient to conclude who drove it there or the circumstances of its arrival. Holden recorded in the file that the initial evidence analysis phase, while procedurally thorough, produced no breakthrough and showed no direct link to any specific individual. After receiving the first evidence analysis report, indicating no leads to narrow suspects or explain why Eliza's car was at the Lake Austin parking lot, Detective Mark Holden moved to the next step in the 1994 missing person protocol, ruling out the possibility that Eliza had left voluntarily runaway to determine whether foul play was involved. This exclusion was mandatory at the time, especially for juveniles under 18. Holden began by checking Eliza's banking activity. The family provided information that Eliza had a small savings account and a joint ATM card with her mother for monthly school supplies purchases. Upon contacting the bank, Holden was informed there had been no withdrawals or payments from November 12 to 15, including the day of disappearance. The balance remained unchanged, with no signs of prior cash withdrawal to prepare for leaving. This effectively ruled out any plan by Eliza to depart or conduct financial activity in support of leaving Austin. Next, Holden reviewed public payphone records around the school, her residential area, and especially the Lake Austin parking lot. In 1994, such data was stored as outgoing call logs from payphone systems, including time, originating area, and called number. Holden requested the telecom company provide full call lists from 2 p.m. to midnight on November 14 for the three areas. After cross-checking, no calls were made to Eliza's home number or any family member's number. No calls originated from the Lake Austin lot area during the 3 o'clock, 8 p.m. window. This ruled out Eliza using a payphone to communicate or arrange departure. Holden further expanded exclusion by checking interstate travel activity. He contacted Greyhound and confirmed no passenger matching Eliza's description purchased a ticket on or before November 14. At the Amtrak station, staff verified no cash ticket purchases by anyone matching her description on the day of disappearance. Holden also reviewed passenger manifests for interstate buses leaving Austin on the evening of November 14. But again, no data placed Eliza at any departure point. All results from banking, payphone systems, and interstate travel records showed no actions by Eliza indicating voluntary departure from Austin. No evidence suggested packing, carrying important personal items, withdrawing money, making calls, buying tickets, or actively traveling to any recorded exit point. These findings allowed Holden to reach a key operational conclusion. The likelihood of Eliza leaving voluntarily was near zero, meaning foul play. Criminal intervention became the primary investigative focus. With foul play established as central, Holden began compiling a potential suspect list based on all data gathered to date. The initial list included three main groups: individuals with direct acquaintance to Eliza, including classmates, instructors, school staff, and those present in the hallway corridor during the 3 o'clock, 3:10 p.m. window, individuals who could have accessed Eliza in blind spot areas, such as the rear stairwell and back parking lot, and strangers who may have accessed the Lake Austin parking lot from afternoon to evening on November 14. Within the acquaintance group, Christopher Wade stood out most prominently due to his appearance in both witness statements and VHS footage. Additionally, Wade's position and timing aligned with Eliza's movement path within a window of less than 2 minutes. However, Holden could not yet dismiss others present in the rear hallway area, technical staff, or students with unusual entries/exits, whose statements remained unclear. In the stranger group, no specific data existed on individuals at the Lake Austin lot during the car's parking timeframe, but Holden flagged this group as potential due to the inability to rule out the vehicle being driven there last by someone else. After consolidation, Holden's potential suspect list included over 10 individuals, some requiring deeper interviews, some needing schedule verification, and others listed provisionally based on area proximity. Though broad, the determination of foul play as the leading possibility allowed Holden to narrow investigative focus onto noteworthy behaviors and timelines of those present during Eliza's disappearance window. With foul play determined as the primary investigative direction and a list of potential suspects already compiled, Detective Mark Holden prioritized interrogating individuals present during the critical time window of 3 o'clock. 3:10 p.m. at Austin Beauty Institute. Among them, Christopher Wade emerged as the person who needed to be interviewed first due to his appearance in both witness statements and the VHS video, along with a travel timeline that matched Eliza's route. On the morning of November 16, 1994, Holden contacted Wade and invited him to the sheriff's office for questioning, clearly explaining that this was a standard interview procedure for individuals present in the area where the victim was last seen. Wade agreed to appear without any objection or apparent concern. The interview took place in a general interrogation room. Holden began by asking Wade to recount his entire schedule for the afternoon of November 14th. Wade stated that he had been at the school for his scheduled practical class, which ended around 3 p.m., and he then left the building to head to his car in the parking lot and go home. When Holden asked for the specific time Wade left the classroom, Wade replied that he remembered around 3:05 p.m. or 3:06 p.m. because he packed up a bit slowly. When cross-checked against the VHS video data, Wade appeared in the hallway at 3 hours 5 minutes and 30 seconds p.m., which partially aligned with his statement. However, an issue arose when Holden asked what Wade did immediately after leaving the camera frame. Wade said he went straight to his car, but when asked to describe the details, Wade could not explain exactly which direction he turned at the three-way junction in the side hallway. He also did not recall meeting anyone or anyone passing by during that time. When Holden asked for the precise time Wade reached the parking lot, he could not provide a specific time frame. This created a 6-7 minute gap in Wade's timeline, from his appearance on camera until he claimed to have left the parking lot to head to his part-time job at 3:15 p.m. Holden checked the part-time job hours Wade mentioned. According to his statement, Wade had a part-time shift at a small machinery repair shop in East Austin, with the shift starting at 3:30 p.m. When Holden contacted the shop owner to verify, the owner confirmed Wade arrived around 3:35 p.m., not late enough to be suspicious, but also not matching Wade's claim that he left the school immediately and went straight there. Although the drive from the school to the shop took only about 15 minutes, Wade's arrival at 3:35 p.m. raised questions about the unexplained 6-7 minutes after leaving the camera frame. Holden noted this time gap as a point of interest. Going further, Holden checked Wade's class schedule for November 14th. The school confirmed Wade had a class right before Eliza's, and his appearance in the hallway after Eliza was entirely consistent with the class history. However, when Holden asked whether Wade had any interaction with Eliza that day, Wade insisted he did not speak to her, did not meet her, and had no reason to approach her. This slightly contradicted a classmate's statement that Wade was in the area where Eliza was packing up a few minutes before class ended, though not strong enough to be considered a lie. Holden assessed Wade's demeanor throughout the interview. He appeared calm, answered clearly, showed no obvious signs of stress, but also avoided providing specific details. This left Holden unable to determine whether Wade was deliberately evading or simply did not remember minor details of that afternoon clearly. Nevertheless, considering all the data, Wade remained the only person who appeared on the same path as Eliza, within an extremely narrow time frame, just over 1 minute after she appeared on camera. The 6-7 minute gap in Wade's timeline prevented him from being ruled out as a suspect, but it was not sufficient to designate him as an official suspect or to obtain a search warrant for his home. 1994 law required a much higher level of probable cause for a search warrant, and Holden knew he currently had no direct evidence linking Wade to Eliza's disappearance. At the conclusion of the interview, Holden officially classified Wade's file as a person of interest, someone requiring continued monitoring, but without sufficient legal grounds to go further. This conclusion was recorded in the November 16 report, along with the relevant timelines, confirming that Wade was the last person seen following the direction in which Eliza had left, yet there was still no physical evidence proving any direct connection between the two at the time of the disappearance. Christopher Wade's designation as a person of interest gave Detective Mark Holden a focal point in the investigation, but because there was still no direct evidence linking him to Eliza's disappearance, Holden was forced to continue expanding community information gathering to avoid missing any leads. In the days following the dissemination of the missing person information, the sheriff's office received numerous calls offering tips, most of which were vague or irrelevant. However, one call on the afternoon of November 17, 1994, drew attention because the tipster, Carla Reed, claimed to have witnessed an abduction around the time Eliza disappeared. Carla, 22 years old and living about 3 blocks from the school, stated she saw 2 Latino men force a young woman matching Eliza's description into a silver SUV near the Riverside Drive intersection around 3:20 p.m. on November 14. According to Carla, the SUV had heavily tinted rear windows, a license plate that appeared to include the letter D, and the 2 men were wearing long coats and acting aggressively. This report immediately triggered an entirely new investigative direction, as Holden knew any account describing an overt abduction had to be thoroughly verified, especially when it aligned with the victim's disappearance timeframe. Holden promptly deployed a team of officers to canvass the Riverside Drive area, checking parking lots, residences, and nearby businesses, while also contacting any locations that might have surveillance cameras, though civilian cameras were very rare at the time. Meanwhile, another team began analyzing the description of the silver SUV and the 2 men. Based on Carla's account, investigators compiled a list of common silver SUV models from that era and cross-referenced it with Travis County vehicle registration records to identify matching owners. Using the features of tinted windows and license plate with D, Holden identified 12 partial matches and requested checks on each individual. Over the next 3 days, the team contacted each of the 12 vehicle owners and gathered information about their activities on the afternoon of November 14. Some had clear alibis, such as being at work on a recorded shift or outside Austin. Others were never in the Riverside Drive or South Lamar area. The 5 cases examined more closely showed no evidence linking them to Eliza or placing them near the school on the day of the incident. Upon deeper analysis of Carla's statement, Holden began noticing inconsistencies. Although Carla claimed to have seen the event at 3:20 p.m., this conflicted significantly with the camera data and witness statements from the school. Eliza was recorded leaving the hallway at 3:04 p.m., and no one saw her anywhere near Riverside Drive, which was about a 5-minute drive from the school. This made Carla's description difficult to sustain, unless she had misremembered the time or the incident was unrelated to Eliza. Holden requested Carla come to the sheriff's office for a detailed statement, and during the in-person exchange, numerous inconsistencies emerged. Carla could not clearly recall where she was standing when she saw the event, could not specify the exact direction the vehicle left, and her description of the 2 men varied between tellings. When asked why she did not report it on November 14 and waited 3 days, Carla said she was afraid of getting involved, but this reason did not convince Holden. After more than an hour of questioning, Holden directly asked about the possibility that Carla had exaggerated or fabricated the information in exchange for something. At that point, Carla began to waver and ultimately admitted she was facing potential prosecution for a minor violation related to failing to appear for a subpoena in another matter. According to her, an acquaintance told her that providing useful information in a serious case could lead to leniency or a delay in her case processing. This prompted her to make up the abduction story she had never witnessed. Holden immediately documented this admission and entered it into the official report. Carla's false statement caused the entire investigative direction based on the silver SUV and 2 male subjects to be completely eliminated. 4 days of team effort and considerable resources were expended, but it produced no leads relevant to Eliza's disappearance. The final conclusion was recorded in the file. Carla's statement was unreliable. No verified silver SUV had any connection to the victim, and this investigative direction was officially removed from the case file. After the investigative direction based on Carla Reed's false statement was fully eliminated and yielded no progress, Detective Mark Holden returned to the core case information and considered the need for a deeper perspective on criminal behavior to determine which pattern of behavior best fit Eliza's sudden disappearance. With no specific physical evidence and no direct eyewitnesses, Holden decided to forward the case file to the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit to create a behavioral profile under their protocol for assisting in serious missing persons cases, particularly involving minors. The file sent to BSU included all data collected from November 14 to 18. Eliza's detailed timeline, the VHS video capturing her last appearance, witness list and statements, initial physical evidence results, Christopher Wade's appearance timestamps, information about the vehicle found at Lake Austin, and reports ruling out runaway, on-scene struggle, or overt abduction. BSU experts began analyzing the event based on established behavioral patterns from prior missing persons cases. They paid particular attention to the suddenness of the disappearance. Eliza appeared in the hallway for only a few seconds before leaving the camera and then left no trace whatsoever. This indicated the act occurred in an extremely short time frame and in a concealed location, consistent with an approach by an individual familiar with the victim's movement habits or with an opportunity to access her in a blind spot, an area where no one could see. Based on these factors, BSU developed a preliminary behavioral profile of a potential offender. Someone likely acquainted with the victim, or at least familiar with the school's layout, dismissal time, and Eliza's path. Male, late teens to early 30s. Approaching the victim in a non-attention-drawing manner, and likely having prepared a vehicle to leave the scene quickly. This report matched at a high level the behavior seen in missing persons cases, where the offender left no physical trace but had control over the access environment. Upon receiving the profile from the FBI, Holden immediately cross-referenced it with the pre-existing list of 14 individuals, including acquaintances, classmates, school staff, and those present in the hallway or adjacent areas during the 3 o'clock, 3:10 p.m. window. BSU suggested that the group of direct acquaintances had a higher likelihood than strangers due to the short, low-disruption access chain, meaning the offender did not need to search for the victim, but could simply encounter her according to her routine. This prompted a second screening of the 14-person list, focusing on those present at the school who could have accessed Eliza in the hallway or parking lot. After careful screening, Holden narrowed it to 8 individuals with close connections, 5 classmates, 1 maintenance technician, 1 instructor, and Christopher Wade. However, among these 8, only 3 best fit the BSU behavioral profile, those present closest in time to Eliza, those whose paths overlapped, and those unable to provide a clear timeline for the entire critical window. Christopher Wade topped the list due to 4 factors, appearing right after Eliza on video only 72 seconds apart, being in the side hallway at the exact time the victim passed through, having an unexplained 6-7 minute gap in his timeline, and matching appearances in multiple witness statements. The other 2 individuals in the top 3 included a male classmate seated at the back of the class that afternoon, and a maintenance technician working near the side stairwell. However, both had clearer timelines and witnesses confirming their locations shortly after Eliza vanished, placing them behind Wade in priority. Even so, Holden could not take any stronger action against Wade or the other 2. as all indicators were behavioral and completely lacked physical or forensic evidence to establish legal responsibility. The FBI provided only guidance and behavioral modeling tools to narrow the scope, but not usable as grounds for search warrants or arrests. Thus, although Wade emerged as the most fitting suspect according to the BSU profile, Holden was forced to note in the file that there was still no direct evidence to proceed further, and no legal action could be taken as of late November 1994. In the many weeks following receipt of the FBI behavioral profile, Detective Mark Holden continued reviewing every detail of the entire investigation, hoping to find an overlooked link that could open a new direction. However, despite having taken statements from all witnesses present during the critical window, examined Eliza's vehicle, processed physical evidence, ruled out runaway, and screened suspects according to the behavioral profile, no evidence was strong enough to advance the case. Throughout the 18 months after Eliza's disappearance, the sheriff's office maintained periodic case follow-up whenever there was a report of someone seeing a girl resembling Eliza, a tip about a suspicious vehicle, or an item found near the lake. Holden deployed checks, but all led to the same conclusion, unrelated to the case. Even many new items reported or brought in by the public proved to have no investigative value, wasting time on verification without progress. The file recorded that, during this period, no additional physical evidence emerged from the school scene, the vehicle, or the Lake Austin area. Surrounding areas of the school were searched thoroughly, multiple times. Parking lots, pedestrian paths, side stairwells, and lakeside roads were all canvassed, but every effort stopped at the search level without uncovering further traces. This left the investigation completely stalled. In compiling all the information, Holden re-evaluated each investigative direction pursued. The Christopher Wade lead had once seemed the most promising, but lacked technical evidence. The Carla Reed witness direction was fully eliminated due to false information. Stranger at the lakeside parking lot direction could not continue due to no cameras, no traces, and no witnesses. Physical examination of the vehicle produced no identifying results. Runaway was ruled out early, but offered no new openings. All these directions, when reassessed under then-current professional standards, ended in deadlock due to the lack of a direct link between physical evidence and any specific individual. Under 1994-1995 legal standards, any stronger legal action, such as obtaining a search warrant or arrest warrant, required specific evidence or at least clear physical indicators. However, Holden had nothing beyond a vague timeline, a gap in Wade's statement, a few pieces of non-identifying evidence, and a suggestive rather than conclusive behavioral profile. This meant the sheriff's office could not obtain a search warrant for anyone's home, as the court would immediately deny any request due to insufficient proof of a direct connection between a suspect and the offense. By mid-1996, after exhausting all feasible investigative actions within legal bounds, Holden held a final case review meeting with the officers assigned to the case. At the meeting, each investigative direction was re-examined: Wade's appearance on video, his time gap, the vehicle found at Lake Austin, the absence of physical evidence, the lack of any witness seeing Eliza leave the parking lot, and the limitations of forensic technology at the time. All were analyzed thoroughly, but the final conclusion remained unchanged. No direction had sufficient grounds to continue without falling into speculation. At this point, per Travis County Sheriff's Office protocol, a missing persons case that had seen no new leads in over a year and no significant activity from the investigative team would be considered for transfer to inactive or cold case status to preserve resources and shift priority to cases with more information. After reviewing all data and applying professional standards, Holden made the official decision to recommend classifying Eliza Hartley's file as a cold case. This process included sealing all physical evidence in the evidence vault, archiving the VHS tape, witness statements, lab reports, and all investigative notes in the unsolved case storage cabinet. All evidence was placed in long-term storage, labeled with case number, closure date, and status pending reopening upon new information. By the end of 1996, the disappearance of Eliza Hartley was officially closed as a cold case, marking the end of the initial investigative phase that had lasted nearly 2 years without achieving any breakthrough. By 2016, nearly 2 decades after the Eliza Hartley file was classified as a cold case, the Travis County Sheriff's Office began restructuring its investigative force to address the large number of unsolved cases from the 1990s. A new unit, the Cold Case Unit, was established with the goal of reviewing, evaluating, and reopening files that still held potential based on advances in modern forensic technology. The unit consisted of a team of young, well-trained officers and technicians in analyzing old data, combined with several veteran investigators familiar with the specifics of inactive cases. Among the files assigned to the new unit, the Eliza Hartley disappearance was placed in the priority group due to its mysterious nature, the timing coinciding with a period of many similar unsolved cases, and especially because the file still contained a complete set of evidence properly sealed since 1996. The person directly assigned to handle this file was Detective Sarah Whitmore, a young investigator but experienced in cross-referencing old files and utilizing modern forensic technology. Upon receiving the file, Whitmore began reading the entire reports from the 1994-1996 period. From Detective Mark Holden's initial statements to investigative notes, witness statements, crime scene maps, evidence examination reports, and the case closure recommendation. She sequentially studied the detailed timeline compiled by Holden, reviewed diagrams of movements around the Austin Beauty Institute, analyzed the location where the car was found at Lake Austin, and paid particular attention to evidence that had been examined but yielded no useful results at the time. While reviewing the examination reports, Whitmore noted that in 1994-1996, Texas AFIS fingerprint analysis technology had limited data. DNA testing was not widespread. YSTAR testing did not exist at the local level, and VHS tape enhancement was virtually impossible. This caused much of the evidence at the time to be rated as no value. But with 2016 technology, it could potentially yield different results. After reading the entire paper file, Whitmore went to the evidence warehouse to personally check the storage condition. All evidence in the Eliza Hartley case was sealed in its own box, including a piece of gray duct tape recovered from under the passenger seat, a red fabric fiber found on the back seat, a dried mud sample collected from the car floor, fingerprint lifts taken in 1994, and the VHS tape recording Eliza's last known images. There were also several secondary items such as copies of the school floor plan, photos of the lakeside parking lot crime scene, and documents related to witness Christopher Wade. Whitmore recorded that all evidence remained intact, with no signs of damage, no broken seals, and still suitable for re-examination using modern technology. Based on the importance and examinability of each item, Whitmore created a new prioritized list divided into 3 main groups: evidence that could be tested for DNA or modern biological techniques, evidence that could be reanalyzed for fingerprints using the expanded 2016 AFI system, and evidence that could be digitized or image-enhanced for reanalysis. In the highest priority group were the piece of gray duct tape and the red fabric fiber, 2 items previously identified as no identification value in 1994, but now testable for DNA, YSTAR, or advanced spectroscopic material analysis. The second group included all fingerprint lifts taken from the car door handles. These could be rerun through the modern AFIS system, which had been expanded with a database many times larger than in 1994. The third group was the VHS tape. Although the original quality was very low, by 2016 digitalization and image enhancement technology had advanced far enough to allow clearer analysis of the figures appearing in the frames. In addition to physical evidence, Whitmore also reviewed the old suspect list, particularly Christopher Wade, to assess fit with behavioral profiles in light of new technology that could create physical links. Reviewing the old file helped her note that Wade had once topped the list of potential suspects in 1994, but was never examined more thoroughly due to lack of direct evidence. All these notes were compiled by Whitmore into the Cold Case Unit's first internal report, clearly stating 4 objectives: re-verify evidence with new technology, re-compare fingerprints through the modern AFIS system, re-examine the video using image enhancement techniques, and create a list of suspects for re-comparison if new examinations yielded matching results. By the end of the first review day, Whitmore officially marked the Eliza Hartley file as cold case reopened, ushering in a new phase in the reinvestigation of the disappearance that had lasted 22 years. Immediately after the Eliza Hartley file was reactivated by the Cold Case Unit, Detective Sarah Whitmore promptly implemented the plan to examine evidence using modern technology, starting with the group of evidence having the highest potential for identification. The first target was the fingerprints recovered from Eliza's car door handles, evidence that had yielded no results in 1994 due to the limited scope of AFIS data at the time. Whitmore sent all the fingerprint lifts to the Texas State Forensics Lab to be rerun on the new generation AFIS, with its database expanded to millions of samples. Within just 48 hours, the system returned a result. One of the unknown fingerprints lifted from the door handle matched 100% with the fingerprints of Christopher Wade, now stored in the database following a minor administrative violation a few years earlier. This was the first time in 22 years of investigation that a direct forensic link connected Wade, a breakthrough for the Cold Case Unit. Not stopping there, Whitmore next sent the piece of gray duct tape recovered from under the passenger seat to the DNA lab for YSTR analysis, a technique that did not exist in 1994. The technician used a micro-extraction method from the remaining adhesive layer, and after 3 days of analysis, the report showed a male DNA profile present on the tape. When compared to Wade's DNA sample, the results indicated strong similarity between the two, sufficient to be classified as consistent with Y chromosome lineage match. Although not full DNA, the value of YSTR in cold case investigations is extremely significant because it points to a male genetic lineage matching Wade and excludes most other males not in the same Y group. This was the second piece of evidence linking Wade to the car found at Lake Austin. Concurrently, Whitmore sent the red fabric fiber sample to the materials analysis lab for comparison with common fabrics from the 1990s. A technician later suggested that Whitmore review old images of Wade still in the file, including activity photos kept by the school. When comparing with a 1994 class photo of Wade, Whitmore noticed he was wearing a red wool jacket with polyester nylon collar and cuff material consistent with the fiber recovered from Eliza's car. Spectroscopic analysis confirmed the two fabric samples had the same weave structure, fiber type, and color tone. Although it could not be concluded that the fiber came from Wade's exact jacket, the level of similarity was significant enough to be recorded as supporting evidence, further strengthening Wade's connection to the car interior. After processing the fingerprints, DNA, and fiber, Whitmore moved on to the final major piece of evidence: the VHS tape recording Eliza in the school hallway. With assistance from the digitalization department, the tape was digitized at the highest possible resolution, then subjected to image enhancement techniques to clarify outlines and movements of figures in the frames. What had been impossible in 1994 was now feasible. When replaying the entire segment from 3:04 p.m. to 3:06 p.m., Whitmore noticed not only images of Eliza and Wade in the hallway, but also a new detail never previously discovered. Wade's figure appeared in the reflection on the glass door at the end of the hallway at 3 hours 4 minutes and 40 seconds p.m., a time aligning with when Eliza could have been leaving the camera's view. The reflection was faint but identifiable in body shape, height, and head-turning motion consistent with Wade's position. Notably, in the frame at 3 hours 5 minutes and 8 seconds p.m., the reflection showed Wade not walking straight, but apparently turning toward the path leading to the parking lot, the same direction Eliza had taken. Although not a direct frontal image, this was the first time the video indicated that Wade not only followed a similar path to Eliza, but did so close in time to when she disappeared from camera view, reinforcing the long-standing suspicion that Wade was present in the blind spot where no witnesses were available. When all examination results were compiled, Whitmore had in hand the first chain of evidence directly linking Christopher Wade to Eliza's car, the area where Eliza disappeared, and the hallway where she was last seen. The chain included Wade's fingerprint on the car door handle, Wade's YS-tear DNA on the gray duct tape inside the car, a red fiber matching the type of fabric in Wade's 1994 jacket photo, and enhanced video data showing Wade appearing immediately after Eliza in the no-camera area. For the first time in 22 years, the evidence was not merely circumstantial, but formed a connected chain reviving Holden's initial line of inquiry, a chain strong enough for Whitmore to consider the next legal step. Immediately after completing the modern evidence chain directly linking Christopher Wade to both Eliza's car and the hallway where she was last seen, Detective Sarah Whitmore knew the next step could not rely solely on technology, but had to return to the original foundation of the case, the 1994 witness statements. In that year, many statements were recorded when investigative technology was limited and witness memories were fresh, but due to lack of supporting evidence, much of the information had been deemed unimportant or inconsistent. By 2016, the context had changed. The new evidence chain was strong enough to pave the way for comprehensive re-interviewing of all witnesses who had appeared in the file, especially those present between 3 o'clock, 3:10 p.m. Whitmore began contacting each witness and arranging in-person meetings. The first was Dana Mitchell, a classmate who sat at the second table in Eliza's class on the afternoon of November 14, 1994. When meeting Whitmore again, Dana said her memory of that afternoon had faded, but certain details resurfaced when prompted by the timeline and school map. Dana recalled that Wade frequently stood at the back of the class after practice sessions, even though he had no reason to do so since his table was near the door. When Whitmore asked if Dana had seen Wade watching Eliza, Dana replied that she couldn't say for sure, but on a few occasions, she caught Wade looking toward Eliza as the class prepared to end. This detail had not appeared in the 1994 file because no questions had focused on Wade's specific behavior at the time. Next, Whitmore met Jacob Wilford, a student who had incidentally passed through the rear hallway between 3:03–3:05 p.m. Jacob said that in 1994, he had stated he did not see Eliza in that hallway segment. But now, he recalled another detail. Wade stood alone near the intersection of the two hallways for a few seconds before the camera captured him, heading toward the parking lot. When Whitmore asked why this detail was not mentioned in his original statement, Jacob explained that in 1994, he thought it was normal since many students often stood waiting for friends or taking short breaks before leaving school. However, when cross-referenced with the enhanced video, the time Wade spent at that position became suspicious because it did not match his initial claim that he left class and went straight to the parking lot. This reinforced the possibility that Wade had deliberately waited in the area Eliza would pass through. The most important witness in the re-interviews was Karen Salinas, a student who sat in the front of the class and had provided rather general statements in 1994. When shown the classroom and hallway diagrams again, Karen recalled that just a few days before Eliza disappeared, Wade had asked the instructor about changing his practical session time from morning to afternoon. That afternoon slot coincided exactly with Eliza's class time. When Whitmore asked for more detail, Karen said Wade claimed the reason was to fit his part-time work schedule, but she was unsure if that was accurate because Wade continued appearing in many afternoon sessions even though his work schedule had not changed. When Whitmore cross-checked with the school's administrative office, records confirmed Wade had indeed requested the time change, and the timing fell precisely in the week Eliza began afternoon practical sessions. This detail had never been recorded in 1994, and now emerged as an indicator that Wade may have proactively adjusted his schedule to be present during the same time slot as Eliza. When asked whether Wade and Eliza had ever interacted directly, Karen said she did not recall any conversations between them, but she remembered Wade being very attentive whenever Eliza moved around the classroom or packed up, especially on days when Eliza left class early. When Whitmore compiled all the new statements obtained, a clear behavioral pattern began to emerge. Wade not only coincidentally appeared in the same hallway as Eliza at 3:04, 3:05 p.m., but exhibited multiple behaviors indicating interest in or surveillance of Eliza beforehand, including changing class times, waiting at the hallway intersection, and paying attention to the victim's movements. These details, when cross-referenced with key timelines, caused Wade's 1994 self-provided timeline to completely collapse. First, Wade said he only went straight to his car after leaving class, but Jacob's statement and the video reflection showed him lingering at the hallway intersection for about 15-20 seconds, an action never mentioned in the original interview. Second, Wade had claimed he left school immediately to go to his part-time job, but when the class time change detail was placed in context, his 6-7 minute delay in the hallway became intentional behavior rather than due to slow packing. Third, the enhanced video capturing Wade turning toward the parking lot precisely when Eliza passed through the blind spot showed his movement aligned with hers, breaking the old argument that they did not go in the same direction. Upon completing the cross-referencing of all new statements, Whitmore recognized that Wade's behavior was no longer coincidental overlap as assessed in 1994, but a deliberate sequence of approach actions. The combination of new witness statements, the unusual class time change, the enhanced video, and modern forensic evidence had elevated Wade from person of interest to the prime suspect, whose behavior nearly perfectly matched the pattern of an offender approaching a victim in a blind spot. With the modern chain of evidence, re-verified statements, and consistent behavioral profile pointing to Christopher Wade, Detective Sarah Whitmore determined that the legal threshold for taking the most critical step, obtaining a search warrant, had been met. All new data, including matching fingerprints, compatible YSTR DNA, similar fibers, and enhanced VHS video showing Wade appearing right after Eliza, and additional witness statements that dismantled Wade's entire self-provided timeline, were compiled by Whitmore into a report exceeding 40 pages and submitted to the Travis County District Attorney's Office as the basis for requesting a search warrant for Wade's residence. In the report, Whitmore emphasized that the entire body of new evidence and statements not only formed a logical sequence, but also reinforced a chain of behavior, deliberate targeting, and approach of the victim, making Wade the sole suspect capable of direct contact with Eliza at the time of her disappearance. The district attorney assessed the file as having sufficient legal grounds, and in the first week of September 2016, the Travis County Court approved the search warrant for Wade's current residence, a small apartment on the east side of Austin. The cold case unit immediately assembled a team to execute the warrant the following morning, ensuring every step followed standard procedures to preserve the legal integrity of the evidence. Upon entering the apartment, Whitmore focused on observing locations that might contain small or long-stored items of evidence. In the living room, the team quickly discovered an industrial roll of gray duct tape in a tool cabinet drawer. Upon visual comparison, the roll had reinforced fiber texture and color identical to the piece of duct tape recovered from Eliza's car in 1994. Next, in Wade's bedroom, under the bed, a loosely sealed clear plastic storage bin was found. Inside the bin were various miscellaneous items, a hair tie, 2 old student worksheets, and most importantly, a metal pendant engraved with EHE, matching the pendant Eliza wore in photos from Austin Beauty Institute. This item, which had never been listed among the belongings Eliza had with her on the day she disappeared, was the first major discovery directly linking a personal possession of the victim to Wade's residence. In addition to the pendant, the search team found a cloth bag containing several items of unclear origin, a handkerchief with faded red stains, a hairdressing instruction book with handwritten markings of Eliza's name in the corner margin, and a small note in what was believed to be Wade's handwriting. The content was unclear, but referenced after school time and back way. All of this evidence was cataloged, sealed, and immediately transferred to the crime lab, while Whitmore personally photographed and documented everything to ensure an absolutely accurate chain of custody. After completing the collection of new evidence, Whitmore returned to the office and began cross-referencing each sample with the old evidence. Initial results from the lab showed that the duct tape roll recovered from Wade's home had 100% identical material structure to the piece of duct tape found under the passenger seat of Eliza's car. Fibers from the cloth bag in Wade's home had matching weave composition to the red fibers recovered from the car, and especially the pendant was confirmed by the family as Eliza's, an item she wore daily in 1994 and never removed from her person. This new chain of evidence both established a direct link between Wade and Eliza's personal items and reinforced consistency with the evidence from the car. The full cross-reference results were compiled by Whitmore into a detailed legal report, concluding that the new and old chains of evidence together formed a complete chain of evidence, something that had not been possible in 1994. The report was sent to the district attorney, along with a recommendation to seek an arrest warrant for Christopher Wade for direct involvement in Eliza Hartley's disappearance. This was the first time in 22 years that the cold case file had sufficient legal grounds to shift from passive investigation to proactive legal action, marking the most significant turning point since the case began. After the evidence obtained from the search warrant strengthened the chain of evidence and successfully matched the 1994 evidence, the Travis County District Attorney approved an arrest warrant for Christopher Wade on charges directly related to Eliza Hartley's disappearance. Given the file's indication that Wade had a potential for resistance and had previously worked at a mechanical facility where he had access to dangerous tools, the cold case unit coordinated with SWAT to execute the arrest in order to ensure officer safety. The arrest was planned for the early morning of September 22, 2016, at the North Austin apartment complex where Wade was residing, per his updated DMV address. SWAT deployed a semicircle formation around the building, with one team entering the hallway to approach Wade's apartment while the other team set up blocking positions at 3 escape points. When the team knocked and announced the warrant, Wade opened the door but immediately displayed unstable behavior, prompting SWAT to apply standard restraint procedures. He was handcuffed on the spot and escorted to the transport vehicle within 2 minutes to minimize attention from nearby residents. Wade was transported directly to Travis County Jail for booking into custody. Upon arrival at the jail, Wade was swabbed for final DNA comparison for the prosecution file and provided biographical and identification data per 2016 standards. In the interview room, Wade invoked his right to remain silent and requested an attorney, immediately refusing to answer any questions, completely contrary to his cooperative demeanor in 1994. This further reinforced the cold case unit's assessment that Wade fully understood the gravity of the evidence against him. While Wade was in custody, the district attorney's office collaborated with the cold case unit to compile the complete evidentiary chain for the prosecution file. The file was divided into 4 categories: forensic timeline, supplemental physical evidence, and behavioral. In the forensic category, the DA listed all technical evidence: Wade's fingerprints on Eliza's car door handle, YSTR DNA extracted from the adhesive layer on the gray duct tape fragment, matching Wade's Y chromosome genetic profile, red fibers in Eliza's car, matching the weave structure and material of fabric samples from Wade's home, red fibers consistent with the red jacket Wade wore in 1994 class photos, and the enhanced VHS video showing Wade appearing in the hallway right at the time of Eliza's disappearance. The timeline category included all cross-reference data from 1994 and the reopened investigation. Wade appeared on camera just 72 seconds after Eliza. His 1994 statement of going straight to the car was contradicted by reflected images and new witness statements, Wade's unexplained 6-7 minute gap, and his movement sequence aligning with Eliza's path to the blind spot area. These data created a clear chronological sequence, showing Wade's presence throughout Eliza's movement path at the time she vanished. In the supplemental physical evidence category, the DA included the chain from the 2016 search, the industrial-grade duct tape roll of the same type as the fragment from the car, the pendant, a clearly personal item belonging to Eliza, found in a storage box under Wade's bed, a handkerchief with faded red stains, and a hair instruction book with handwritten Eliza markings, and Wade's note referencing after-school time and back way, keywords matching Eliza's disappearance route. The behavioral category encompassed all data related to motive and pre-disappearance approach behavior. Wade requesting a class schedule change coinciding with Eliza's afternoon shift in the exact week she started it. Witnesses noting Wade frequently watching Eliza in class, statements showing Wade in the hallway area without camera coverage, enhanced video showing Wade turning in the direction Eliza had gone, and the complete denial in 1994 that they didn't know each other being wholly inconsistent with actual behavior. These behavioral elements were deemed critical by the DA because they established intentional targeting and approach, a factor never clearly established in the 1994 file. Once the full evidentiary chain was assembled, the district attorney prepared a nearly 200-page prosecution file, arguing that the forensic, behavioral, and physical evidence chains formed an unbreakable causal link tying Wade to Eliza's disappearance. The evidence was organized by legal probative order, from hard physical evidence like fingerprints and DNA to softer evidence like supplemental statements and behavior. Concurrently, the DA charged the offense under Texas law. Aggravated kidnapping, missing person, the charge applied when a victim is abducted or controlled, with no clear information on life's death status at the time of prosecution. This charge was sufficient for arrest and trial even without a body, as Texas law permits prosecution in prolonged missing person cases involving abduction elements and a satisfactory evidence chain. On September 30, 2016, the DA formally filed the indictment with Travis County Court and requested no bond detention due to the case's severity. For the first time in 22 years, Eliza Hartley's disappearance was moved from cold case status to a criminal prosecution with an officially arrested and charged suspect under the law. The trial of Christopher Wade began in June 2017 in Travis County Court, drawing significant attention as a disappearance case spanning over 2 decades, with no body but an unprecedentedly strong evidentiary chain in the county's investigative history. The prosecution opened by reconstructing the entire 1994 context, describing the Austin Beauty Institute hallway, Eliza's movement path, the car found at Lake Austin, and the technical limitations of the time that had stalled the case. After the introduction, the prosecution presented the hard evidence chain in logical order. First, Wade's fingerprints on Eliza's car door handle, the first forensic link directly connecting Wade to the victim's vehicle. The prosecution noted that these prints did not match in the limited 1994 AFI's database, but the modern 2016 AFI's system compared millions of records and immediately confirmed a 100% match. The jury was shown photos of the handle location, sampling position maps, and comparison lab reports. Next was the YSTR DNA evidence from the adhesive on the gray duct tape fragment in the car. The prosecution explained that this technology did not exist in 1994, and only in 2016 did the lab extract trace male DNA from the tape, identifying it as belonging to the same Y chromosome lineage as Wade. Though not full DNA, the high compatibility made YSTR powerful evidence, especially combined with fingerprints. Then came the third item, red fibers from the back seat of Eliza's car. Spectroscopy and weave analysis reports showed the fibers had the same polyester nylon structure as the red jacket Wade wore in 1994 class photos. The prosecution continued by introducing fibers from Wade's home for comparison, showing both samples had identical weave and color tone, bridging the 1994 and 2016 evidence. Next was the roll of gray duct tape found in the tool cabinet at Wade's home. The prosecution displayed side-by-side images comparing the reinforced fiber structure between the new roll and the fragment from under Eliza's passenger seat, confirming both came from the same rare civilian type, but common in mechanical shops where Wade had worked. After the forensic evidence, the prosecution moved to the most breakthrough item, the digitally enhanced 1994 VHS video. In court, the video was played frame by frame in slow motion. The jury clearly saw Wade's reflected silhouette in the hallway glass at 3 hours 4 minutes and 40 seconds p.m. and his movement turning toward the parking lot, matching the direction Eliza had left the camera seconds earlier. The video analysis report confirmed this image was invisible with 1994 technology, but digitization clarified outlines and motion, proving Wade's presence in the blind spot area without camera coverage. The prosecution then presented the strongest evidence from the 2016 search, the pendant belonging to Eliza, confirmed by family as an item she wore daily and never lent out. Finding the pendant in a storage box under Wade's bed was direct physical evidence that could not be explained by coincidence or mistake. Additionally, the prosecution displayed the hair instruction book with Eliza's name handwritten on the cover edge, the handkerchief with faded red stains, and Wade's note mentioning after school time and back way, aligning with Eliza's disappearance route. After presenting all physical evidence, the prosecution shifted to behavioral evidence, Wade requesting a schedule change matching Eliza's hours, witnesses noting him alone at the hallway intersection seconds before the video capture. His watching Eliza in class, his 1994 statements contradicted by enhanced video, and his unexplained 6-7 minute gap at the time of Eliza's disappearance. The prosecution argued that the combination of forensic, timeline, and behavioral evidence formed an unbreakable causal chain, with Wade as the only person present at the exact time, exact path, and exact blind spot where Eliza vanished. Next, the defense countered with the no body, no proof argument, claiming no body meant no proof of death or harm, and that the evidence could be coincidental. The defense tried to argue Wade was only a distant acquaintance, that evidence could have been transferred unknowingly, and that the reflected video was not clear enough for conclusion. However, the prosecution rebutted with legal argument. Texas law allows aggravated kidnapping prosecution in prolonged disappearances with physical and behavioral evidence, chains showing abduction. A body is not required. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury unanimously found the evidence chain against Wade met the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, especially with key items, fingerprints, DNA, pendant, duct tape, and enhanced video, placing Wade at the center. On sentencing day, the court read the verdict. Christopher Wade was guilty of aggravated kidnapping, missing person, and sentenced to 25 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. As the trial concluded, the prosecution presented a summary of why the case was not solved in 1994. Limitations of the era's AFIS prevented fingerprint matching. Why STR-DNA technology did not exist. VHS video could not be enhanced. National databases were not large enough, and contemporaneous evidence was not strong enough to meet legal thresholds. In 2016, thanks to modern forensic technology, nationwide scale AFIS, YSTAR analysis, video digitization enhancement, and cross-time evidence comparison capabilities, the entire sequence of events could be accurately reconstructed. At the end of July 2017, Eliza Hartley's file was officially closed, concluding a journey of over 2 decades from disappearance to resolution. A cold case solved through the combination of modern technology, the persistence of the cold case unit, and the final pieces of truth falling into place. The story of Eliza Hartley's disappearance, spanning over 2 decades before being solved, thanks to modern forensic technology, reflects a very familiar reality in the United States today. The intersection of scientific progress, community responsibility, and the role of the legal system in protecting vulnerable individuals. Looking back at the entire journey from 1994 to 2016, what makes this case an important lesson is not just Christopher Wade's conviction, but the gaps that allowed the case to go cold for 22 years. For example, the lack of surveillance cameras at the time of Eliza's disappearance prevented police from accurately reconstructing her path, something that in today's American society, with dense public camera systems, has significantly improved solve rates. Similarly, the inability in 1994 to test YSTR DNA rendered the gray duct tape fragment legally worthless, but in 2016, that very DNA sample became the pivotal evidence holding Wade accountable. This is clear proof that technology not only aids investigations, but also safeguards justice from being forgotten. Another cautionary detail is Wade's behavior, requesting a class schedule change coinciding with Eliza's, waiting at the hallway intersection, appearing in the blind spot, all seemed non-criminal in isolation, but formed a dangerous chain when combined. This reminds parents and students in the U.S. today that paying attention to small unusual behaviors, even just a feeling of something's off, can sometimes make a big difference. Finally, the most important lesson from this cold case is persistence. Eliza's family kept the file alive, and the 2016 Cold Case Unit dared to re-examine every detail instead of accepting past failure. In modern society, where information moves quickly and is easily forgotten, persistence and faith in the truth remain what can deliver justice, even after 20 years or longer. Thank you for joining us in exploring the journey of solving a case that seemed forgotten for over 20 years. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep following more chilling cold case stories. See you in the next video.